Dear editor, I'm Xucong Hu from Southwestern University, and I'm so honored to be here to present my research to you at present. The title of my research is The Uncanny Valley Effect and Induced Compensatory Consumption Behavior in Language Conditions. And I would mainly discuss my research from 6 parts: introduction, literature review, methodology, result, discussion, and also conclusion. So let's come to the first part. Currently, with the rapid development of technology of artificial intelligence, some large enterprises combine AI with marketing using interactive personification incorporated into brand marketing strategy named anthropomorphic marketing. Edison Miku was in a successful case in AI marketing. You can find her in the left picture. She has created a market size of over 57.5 million June in 2007. This kind of marketing cannot always function positively. When robot anthropomorphic reaches a high level, it often brings psychological discomfort to consumers, which is called the uncanny valley effect, as shown in the left picture. It is often started with stimuli when consumers find that the robot's performance do not meet their expectation, point to self-discrepancy cognition leading to negative emotional effects, and ultimately leads to compensatory consumer behavior, result in the mirror image of marketing success, triggering a vicious cycle harmful for long-term healthy marketing development. In the many previous studies on the uncanny valley and compensatory consumption behaviors for the experimental materials, they often use robot fake hands, synthetic images, robot expressions in movies. The probable cause of the uncanny effect is mainly explained in four perspectives: evolution, development, classification difficulty, and expectancy violation. Also, there were some experiments designed to find that there is compensatory behavior in consumer response based on terror management theory in 3 situations of robot service, including attention to status products, desire for social affiliation, compensatory eating. And also, some research explains the shape-based uncanny valley effect from evolutionary and identity threat perspectives. However, the current exploration is insufficient. Besides, in the empirical study, only the difference of compensatory consumption between humanoid robots and human services is compared, and it is not analyzed on the anthropomorphic continuum. Additionally, most studies focus on the theory valley caused by appearance and visual stimulation. So what about the other sensory channels? This paper utilizes Baidu translation software to recode the content of daily conversations in different proportions of robot and human language, so as to control the violation of humans' expectations, seen as the design of independent variable, and would be discussed in detail in the following parts. The main content of the study is to explore the specific psychological process of compensatory consumption caused by the uncanny valley, based on the expectancy violation hypothesis. At the same time, it explores the familiarity curve of the stimulation of language materials and investigate whether there is a threshold to maximize compensatory consumption, minimize the familiarity. This paper has extensive theoretical and practical value. First of all, it is the first empirical research to support violation of expectation hypothesis as a core psychological mechanism of the uncanny valley. Then it broadens the uncanny valley effect caused only by visual stimuli and confirms that the uncanny valley effect also occurs when the robot responds against expectation based on language stimuli. Finally, based on the familiarity curve and the threshold explored under language stimulation, it provides a constructive reference for enterprises to use humanoid robots for marketing. Then I would explain several keywords used in this research. The uncanny valley effect is proposed by Masahiro Mori, a Japanese robot expert. As the right picture shows, it is found that there is a positive correlation between the similarity and familiarity of robots and human beings in the primary stage. When similarity reaches a threshold, the familiarity will drop to the minimum, forming the so-called uncanny valley. When the similarity continues to rise, people will regenerate positive feelings of robots. The expectancy violation hypothesis is more and more widely applied to explain the causes of the uncanny valley effect. Subsequently, person initially forms the personification expectation of the object through vision inconsistent with the information obtained through other sense channels or with the knowledge obtained through further detailed verification, resulting in negative feelings. Under the influence of negative emotions, people often make some compensatory consumption behaviors intended to recover the cognitive inconsistency and negative emotions caused by the consumption behaviors. The core theoretical support comes from self-discrepancy, which means the inconsistency between the ideal self and the real self threaten self-identity, so that individuals want to seek strategies to make up for psychological discomfort. In the former study, it was assumed that humanoid robots would pose identity threats to people as an alternative in many positions, result in self-discrepancy, thus inducing compensatory consumption behaviors. However, this paper believes that it is not roughly due to the identity crisis. It should be discussed based on the expectation violation hypothesis. I would like to explain the process in this flowchart. People tend to personify robots, but when they find that the robot's performances are inconsistent with the image of the robots in self-cognition. That is, when expectations are violated, there will be self-discrepancy. That means the inconsistency between ideal and real perception. In order to alleviate the negative emotions caused by discrepancy, compensatory consumption is adopted to make up for the mental discomfort. Therefore, we can assume that the uncanny valley effect is essentially caused by perceptual paradox caused by people's expectation violations. In previous studies, the uncanny valley effect is discussed stimulated by visual experience, body movements, and also in coordination caused by visual stimuli. However, because the uncanny valley effect is produced in the process of man-robot interaction, and language is an important tool of interaction. Therefore, it is inferred that the uncanny valley effect also exists under language stimulation. The process is similar to what discussed above, from violation expectations to cognition and induced behaviors. The materials in this experiment is to use Baidu Translate as a translation tool to recode the Chinese materials. When using translation software for language translation, it often provides feedback such as grammatical, logic errors, and so on. This is true even in Baidu Translate, the most widely used and convenient translation software in China. For instance, from the left picture, we can find that the last sentence, it is a buzzword in Chinese, which means do not forget the temperature for bearing. Because the word bearing in Chinese ends with the same syllable with temperature, so that this buzzword is a humorous expression used to remind people not to wear less clothes in purpose of looking beautiful. While after translating, it becomes do not forget the temperature for the sake of behavior. Not only violates the original expression, but also makes the words meaningless. This kind of situation highly similar to the phenomenon that the violation of expectation aroused when using AI speech robots. Therefore, we translate the content of daily dialogue in English and control the proportion of words translated by robots and the proportion of words described by people as an indicator to measure the violation of expectations, namely independent variables. We can find the grouping from the following chart. For example, 25% of robot and 70% of human. It consists of the high expectations groups, and 100% people and the 100% of robots as control group. According to previous studies, the main purpose of compensatory conception is to eliminate psychological discomfort, and there's no specific paradigm. So in this experiment, the most common compensatory consumption behavior, namely contemporary eating, is used as the dependent variable. The experimental design is based on psychopy, and here's the version. We design a virtual scenes that with three scenes or dialogue involved daily conversation topics, weather, restaurant location, and also food recommendation. After three conversation, participants were asked to choose from two well-designed menus. The prices of the two menus were different, but the dishes involved were completely consistent, just disrupting the order and the name of the dishes. This method is used as an indicator of the dependent variable compensatory consumption. Finally, the subjects will complete the questionnaire on the evaluation of AI services using like 5-point scale, including 3 questions: degrees of satisfaction, personification, and comfort with robot services. The first 2 questions are designed to interfere with the real purpose of the experiment, and the comfort was a matter of experimental dependent variable familiarity. We finally invited all 20 subjects through the NowDown platform online, including 10 males and 10 females with an average age of 19.79. Then I would present the main flow chart of the experimental procedure. At the beginning of the experiment, the subject is shown with instruction, and next subjects will discuss the daily topic in 3 scenarios. Each conversation includes a question and also an answer as shown in the picture, and participants were asked to choose between sets in highly overlapped but different prices dishes as shown in the left picture, and the robot service was evaluated in the end. The experiment finally collected 19 valid data. In the data analysis, we will use the personification of 0% to 100% as the classification of groups to facilitate the observation of the curves. Specifically, from control 2 to control 1 represents from the 0% to 100%. Meanwhile, the expensive set is defined as 1, and the cheaper one is defined as 0 in order to observe the possibility of making compensatory consumption behaviors. Firstly, descriptive statistics are conducted on subjects' familiarity under different personification degrees. We can observe under the condition or lower level of personification, the familiarity degrees of subjects remain at around 3. However, under the 75% level of personification, familiarity showed a plunge at 2.47 when and 100% in personification, familiarity quickly rises to 4.47, highly consistent with the uncanny valley effect. The chart shows this chart shows the descriptive statistics conducted on compensatory consumption behaviors. We can find that the possibility of compensatory consumption behaviors remain at 0.3 to 0.4 under the conditions of low personification and high personification. When the personification degree is at middle higher stage, namely 50% to 75%. The possibility is higher than 0.7, indicating when personification degree is much higher, the subjects are more likely to make compensatory consumption behavior. According to the inferential analysis, ANOVA shows that the main gender effects is significant under the same, which means under the same personification condition, the familiarity of different genders is significantly different. And further analysis is shown in this picture. The result shows that under the same personification condition, the familiarity of men to roles, male to roles, is significantly lower than that of women. The main effect of personification was significant, indicating that there are significant differences between different personification degrees in subjects' familiarity for robots, and there is no interaction effect between gender and personification. Then for compensatory consumption behavior, ANOVA shows that gender main effect is not significant, which means that gender will not have an impact on compensatory consumption behavior. The main effect of personification was significant, which indicates significant differences in compensatory consumption behavior caused by different personification. The interaction effect of gender and personification is not significant. In the experimental and then hypothesis within makes a linear regression analysis. It shows that the compensatory consumption behavior and the familiarity are significantly negative correlated. Finally, in order to further determine the specific threshold, fitting curve is carried out. The result shows that the cubic equation has the best fitting effect. And here's the equation. Mathematical calculation shows that when personification is about 64.25%, the familiarity reaches the lowest level. Value, namely the threshold. Meanwhile, when the personification is about 38.93%, the familiarity begins to rapidly decrease. So 39% is regarded as the bounding line of the sharp decline of preference curve under language stimulation. The results of the experiment is basically in line with the previous research hypothesis. We find that there is an uncanny valley effect under language stimulation, but also provides empirical support for the fact that high expectation violation is the root cause of the sharp decline in familiarity curve. Finally, the threshold is of guiding significance for the research of AI prizes. On the primary stage, it is beneficial, and on the middle stage, it causes a reaction, and in the percentage or for 100, it still to be beneficial. But there was still something should be discussed in this part. We find that in the ANOVA of familiarity, we find that gender differences are significant, which means under various personification conditions, the familiarity of male is lower than that of women, and women fluctuate less among different conditions based on previous studies. This may be because women's empathy and understanding are stronger than men, and generals of women are more harmonizations, so that they more tend to look forward to a positive response from others. At the same time, we would find that in the curve of compensatory consumption behaviors, the stage of sharp rise is about 25% to 50% of personification, while in the curve of familiarity, the sharp decline is between 50% to 75%. In this regard, the possible explanation is that when the degree of personification is 25% to 50% due to the different psychological threshold of individuals. Some people have produced compensatory consumption behaviors caused by violation expectation. inducing behavior responses subconsciously under the threshold, since they misunderstand as a result of intimacy brought by the increase of personification degrees or levels. However, when the psychological threshold is broken, there will be a sharp decline in emotional feelings. At this time, compensatory consumption behaviors continues to rise. From research, we can find three conclusions that in the language stimulation, there is a familiarity curve on the personification continuum similar to the uncanny valley effect. And the second, under the language stimulus materials, there is a compensatory consumption index curve complementary to the familiarity of the personification continuum. And there is a threshold in the personification curve which makes the degree of the violation expectation highest, the familiarity lowest, with the highest compensatory consumption behavior. And there are also some limitations in the design of the study. First of all, the sample size of the experiment is small, with only 20. Meanwhile, most of the participants are college students aged approximately 20 with a similar cultural context and educational background. Secondly, in order to facilitate the implementation, we just choose a fixed value. While after all, the personification is a continuum from 0 to 100%. And also, whether the accurate threshold can be obtained by statistical fitting curve needs further discussion. Therefore, in future study, it is promising to study the uncanny valley effect in different ages and culture backgrounds. In addition, it could be further explored relevant how to reduce the negative impact of the uncanny valley effect through some specific interventions. Finally, we hope to continue to enrich the research on the uncanny valley effect under other sensory stimuli channels like auditory. Okay, so here I presented the reference, and that's all. Thanks for your watching. Thank you very much.